Hello and welcome to my presentation on the sounds of Mycenean Greek. Mycenean Greek is a language far older than the Greek of the ancient world that you may be familiar with, and today I'm going to talk about it. Hopefully you learned something cool. So you may have heard of ancient Greek before. The language that this guy Plato spoke, right? Right? Well, it might be that there was a language older than ancient Greek. There were a lot of ancient Greek languages, in fact, some even older than the world of classical Athens, familiar from the dialogues of Plato. Mycenaean was one of those languages, and it's pretty different from what people were speaking in the classical world. One cool thing about Mycenaean is that it probably was the language spoken by all of the Greek heroes in stories like the Iliad and the Odyssey, tales about the Greek Golden Age that depict great kings with huge palaces, always with a bit of a nostalgic tint. Part of the reason for this is grounded in true history. The Bronze Age ended with the collapse of civilizations all around the Mediterranean, including the Mycenean Greek. The ruins of Mycenaean palaces dotted the land when people like Plato and Aristotle argued about philosophy, comparing their own flawed society to a golden age of myth that came before. Here's a sort of a family tree of Mycenaean. It's what's called a Hellenic language, a group of languages particular to the Greek world, related to other European language families like the Romance languages and the Germanic languages, through a common ancestor in prehistoric times, the reconstructed proto-language Proto-Indo-European. You can see here that Mycenaean isn't that far removed from its Proto-Indo-European ancestor, which is one of the reasons it sounds so different from later Greek languages. In fact, Mycenaean is also the direct ancestor of modern Greek, and the earliest attested ancestor distinct from Proto-Indo-European. We abbreviate Proto-Indo-European as PIE, because that would be a mouthful to say every time. Unfortunately, it has nothing to do with pie. Unless you've discovered an ancient pie recipe from prehistoric Europe, that would be really cool. Actually, languages like Mycenaean are important to study because they help us learn about even older languages, as well as the languages that came after, because they provide a kind of a link in the chain of history. Studying the sounds of Mycenaean can tell us a lot about our history and about how languages work in general. For example, Mycenaean is really different from later Greek languages. It maintains some sounds from Proto-Indo-European and Proto-Greek that were lost in later Greek languages, including labialized velar sounds like qua, and the approximants ya and wa. Learning about how these sounds changed in Mycenaean is very informative about how the ancient Greek family developed as a whole. One particular phenomenon that people are interested in, intervocalic H. Somewhere between Proto-Indo-European and Proto-Greek, the sound S between vowels and at the beginning of words turned into an H, or a fricative of a different type. Then that H just started to go away completely. But what if it survived all the way into Mycenaean? There's been some disagreement on this. So hard to answer questions like what happened to intervocalic H is because the linear B script was really bad, and not just because it was kind of tricky to write. The problem was, it just wasn't designed to communicate the sounds of Mycenaean Greek. The Bronze Age Greeks actually just took their script from another culture, possibly the Minoans of Crete, and they spoke a really different language, so the script used for Mycenaean was meant for a different language entirely. As linear B can only represent open syllables, that's syllables that end in a vowel, probably because its original language had mostly open syllables, Mycenean Greek isn't great for the script. Mycenean Greek has lots of closed syllables. Also, there are phonemic distinctions in Mycenaean that aren't represented in the syllabary. Here's a picture of the Mycenaean symbols and the sounds associated with them. You can see here that it might be difficult to make some Greek words, like dactyl, for example, spelled D-A-C-T-Y-L, a type of metrical foot in poetry, which has the consonant cluster CT and ends with a closed syllable. Try making that from these. Basically, you get the picture. The Mycenaeans had to heavily adapt the writing system they borrowed to make it fit their sound system halfway decently, adopting a convoluted series of orthographic rules along the way. That makes drawing inferences about Mycenaean sounds from Mycenaean texts interesting. Phonemic distinctions between voiced and unvoiced, aspirated and unaspirated consonants are not recognized by the script. They have to be figured out by context. One of the sounds that could show up a couple of different ways in Mycenaean was H. In the symbol you see here, called A2 by Mycenaean scholars, either HA or a long A sound can be represented, and which depends on context. This symbol actually provides a clue about what the status of intervocalic H was in Mycenaean, but it might not be obvious at first. The main argument to this effect is given by Colvin 2006, but I'll summarize it here. Sign 25, or A2, can be interpreted as long A or as HA, but it often appears between other vowels, and if read as HA instead of long A in those places, it seems to be evidence of intervocalic H. The old intervocalic S may never have fully disappeared, some say. Instead, the underlying form is retained in Mycenaean, in medial positions, but always realized as H. The key here is that the occurrence of H is systematic, it's represented in this script, and the systematicity of its appearance in Mycenaean doesn't appear to be completely fossilized. It doesn't make sense, Colvin argues, for long A to appear next to another vowel, given other facts about ancient Greek phonology, so we should take this as evidence of intervocalic H alive and well in the Mycenaean Greek language. In conclusion, evidence points to intervocalic H in Mycenaean past when other scholars had previously thought it to have disappeared. And Colvin's arguments rely on morphological and phonological evidence to justify interpreting the ambiguous sign. Despite the difficulty presented by the linear B script, linguists can learn more about the sounds of Mycenaean, using what they know from the various subfields of linguistics to draw conclusions about how the language might have worked and might have sounded, and that can inform us about the languages that came before and after Mycenaean Greek. Thank you. I hope you learned a lot.